Welcome back to Inside Politics. We're talking today to former Nashville Mayor Karl Dean and Michael Cass, former Tennessean reporter. They have a book out that you'll want to see. It's called Nashville, the South's New Metropolis. In the foreword, Mayor Megan Barry wrote the foreword for it. It's very, very complimentary of the book and of course, about Nashville. It strikes me that all three of you come from outside Nashville. You're not born and raised here. Does that give you a little bit different perspective, Mayor, on how Nashville has changed? You're not as tied to the past. You're not like I am. So, well, I remember how things used to be, how things were when they were growing up here.
It may. I mean, I think certainly going back to Mayor Bredesen, I mean, you've had 4 mayors in a row who didn't grow up here and came here for different reasons. Most of us came either for business or for education reasons. But, you know, I've been here for 35 plus years, since 1978, and I feel, and I'm married to a long-time Nashville native, and so maybe there's a little bit of that to it, but I think the city itself, even people who've lived here for a long time, have sort of embraced change. And there are things we want to preserve, and I think we're thoughtful about that. But the city sort of, I think, has achieved a right balance where you've got to be protective of things such as Music Row and the history that's occurred here, but you also have to be a place that's dynamic, that is creating jobs and that's creating opportunities. I mean, cities that succeed, and Nashville, I think, is a successful city, are cities that allow people to live their dreams, have their opportunities, and to get jobs and to succeed in life. And that's what attracts people to those cities, is that sense that there's all sorts of possibilities. And Nashville has that now, and I think that's fully embraced by folks who came here after they were born, or people who were born here.
Michael, let's talk a little bit about the history that you cover in the book. You talked about mostly focusing on the last 25 years, but it appears one of the key factors in Nashville's growth actually started about 55 years ago with the approval of metropolitan government here. Why has that continued to be such a critical element of Nashville's success?
Well, I think one thing is that it makes the city easier, or the government easier to deal with. One person I talked to mentioned another city in the United States where there are something like 40 different municipalities all within one county, and you know, we're just one city within one county, and the governments are together, so you don't have duplication of services. You do have a large council as a result of that, but it's just one government for people to come in and work with, and I think that helps a lot.
Right. And I think it's important to remember too, when you have an area that's basically 500 square miles, when you look at a lot of American cities that went through some real tough times in the 60s and the 70s when downtowns emptied out all over the United States and cities lost their tax bases because they were such small geographical areas. In Nashville, because it's so large and we contain rural, suburban, and really urban areas, we've been able to have a strong tax base all during that time. So I would rank the consolidation efforts of the early 60s and their successful implementation as being probably one of the key development over the last 55 years or so.
Michael, you've written quite a bit when you were at the Tennessean about the civil rights movement, which had a major role here in Nashville as well, particularly the early days with the lunch counter sit-ins. Yet those two things occurred in Nashville, both the civil rights movement and the metro movement, about the same time, yet it seems to me historically they were almost like two ships passing in the night. There was not a lot of cross-pollination between the two. When you've talked to the people involved in that, was there a reason for that, or it just sort of happened that way?
I think it maybe just happened that way. I think there was an initial referendum for consolidation in 1958, and that movement failed. Mm-hmm. And then they came back in 62 and campaigned differently and got it done. The sit-ins were happening in the middle of that in late 59, early 60, and it, maybe like you said, they were just two ships passing.
Mayor, it's interesting. Consolidation was so important to Nashville, yet so few cities across Tennessee have adopted it. I think there's only 2 or 3 other places, Lynchburg and maybe down in Tullahoma, they've done it. But so if it's been so good here, was it just something unique about Nashville that made it happen, where it's been difficult in other parts of the state?
Yeah, I think we have, thinking back over the years, particularly at the old state of metros, we really honored the founding fathers of the metro form of government. And that was very appropriate. It was not easy to do. I mean, when you create a metropolitan government, when you consolidate governments, someone's given up power. and you're making decisions on a rational, almost business-like way to how you can deliver government services in the best way. But government isn't good about giving up power or people saying let's make things simpler or sharing. And it occurred here, and I think that was a huge thing, and they deserve tremendous credit. Of course, you've seen other cities, Indianapolis, Louisville, maybe 10 or 12 years did it. But it's hard to do. I've spoken different parts of the country where people are interested in it, and they all acknowledge we want to do it, but how do we get it done? That's the hard part.
Michael, one other part of history of Nashville that goes beyond the 25-year period that you mostly look at in this book was a vote that was taken in about 1968 that allowed liquor by the drink in Nashville. There's a lot of things that would have been that are in your book that wouldn't have been there if it hadn't been for liquor by the drink. Maybe even more so than you might think. I mean, the restaurant scene certainly, but probably also a lot of the hotels and including the convention center and business we have here.
Yeah, I think the tourism industry, which is a huge part of our diverse economy here in Nashville, would be much less if you didn't have that. I mean, hotels, restaurants, you probably wouldn't have the Music City Center, or not at the size that it is. So that made a big impact. Let's
take a break. We're talking with Michael Cass, former Tennessean reporter and mayoral assistant to both Mayor Karl Dean and current Mayor Megan Barry. Mayor Karl Dean is also with us today as well. They're both co-authors of a book called Nashville, the South's New Metropolis. Back to continue our conversation after this break.